My name is Harrison Lloyd, and this is a presentation aimed at assessing the success of a second-tier competition in the Australian Rugby Union by first looking at the development of rugby union within the Australian sporting landscape. In doing so, I will look to answer the following question with reference to this quote. Rugby union has embraced professionalism since 1995 and has expanded at the elite or Super Rugby level. However, much remains to be done to realise professionalism in domestic Australian club rugby. Does the second tier of Australian Rugby Union require as much development as this critical comment suggests? Document and comment on the changes undertaken to domestic rugby in recent times, and comment on their success or otherwise. In order to appropriately answer the questions asked, 3 qualifying questions must be established and then referred back to upon reflection. These questions are: has the second tier model been proven as a developmental tool for national success? Has the inclusion of the second tier allowed rugby to reach a broader market? And does the modification to the rules of the second tier allow a more exciting, expansive brand of rugby to be displayed? In 1995, SANZAR, or the South African, New Zealand and Australian Rugby Unions, developed a new professional competition to foster the successes of their national teams, as well as provide rugby players the chance to be fully professional athletes. The founding franchises in Australia were the ACT Brumbies, New South Wales Waratahs and Queensland Reds, who contested the inaugural Super 12 competition with 5 teams from New Zealand and 4 from South Africa. Following a new TV deal in 2006, the competition was expanded to 14 teams, and the Western Force were introduced as Australia's 4th franchise. Further expansion as part of a new SANZAR 5-year broadcast plan allowed the Melbourne Rebels to be formed in 2012 to contest the newly formed Super 15 competition. Another expansion of the competition allowed the opportunity for the Sunwolves from Japan and the Jaguares from Argentina to contest the competition in 2016. However, following much criticism about the new format of the competition, SANZAR decided to cut 2 teams at the end of the 2017 season, and on August 11, 2017, ARU CEO Bill Pulver announced that the Western Force would no longer compete in the Super Rugby competition. After experiencing little success in the Super Rugby competition of late, there were many who believed that losing Australian teams is the best thing for improved success, as the talent was spread too thin across 5 franchises. The Western Force never finished higher than 7th in their history, while the Melbourne Rebels have never finished higher than 10th. The ACT Brumbies are the most successful franchise with 2 competition wins, while the Reds and Waratahs have won 1 each. These results could be attributed to lack of or poor distribution of talent and lack of Super Rugby standard player production at the grassroots, which, as you'll see, isn't due to decreasing participation, but potentially poor development pathways at the second tier. Participation across all levels of Australian Rugby Union has been on a steady increase since 2010, as the figure shows. From 2010 to 2015 inclusive, participation numbers in all levels and all forms of rugby have grown from 209,571 taking part to 706,345 participants in 2015, and it can only be assumed that they have continued to grow thereafter. In assessing this growth, it must be first established potential strategies and programs that ARU have implemented successfully. Alongside the 2011 Rugby World Cup in New Zealand and Australia's success in the tournament in reaching the semi-final and eventually finishing 3rd, there was an increase in participation rates. There is potential that this could be attributed to the increased exposure of rugby union in mainstream media, as well as increased promotion of the game, leading to higher participation. Similarly, the success of the 2013 British and Irish Lions Tour and all the hype surrounding the event would have increased the exposure of rugby union and helped to contribute to increases in participation across all levels. Implementation of programs such as Viva 7, a non-contact modified rugby that has been taken into schools, accommodates for more participants and allows a wider range of children to become involved with rugby, and, with that, a mass increase in participation, or, as the ARU like to call it, rugby experiences. Other programs, such as the newly formed AON University Sevens, designed to provide a distinct pathway for women in rugby, on the back of Olympic success, as well as competitions like the Super 20s, have further developed pathway systems and allowed more children to become involved and, potentially, explore a future in rugby. 2007 brought about a change for Australian rugby with the development of the second tier to compete alongside New Zealand's ITM Cup or the Currie Cup in South Africa. To be called the Australian Rugby Championship, this competition was the first step in bridging the gap between club rugby and Super Rugby, and would go on to feature the best club players from the various domestic competitions, as well as the up-and-coming or fringe Super Rugby players. The ARC was intended to be a stepping stone in the pathway to the Wallabies for the ARU, ideally readying players to take that next step into their professional careers. The competition was successful in doing so, with at least 10 of the players in the following TV commercial going on to play Super Rugby, and the vast majority playing for the Wallabies or Australian Sevens. However, despite the developmental successes associated with the ARC, the competition tanked after its first season. The ARU fielded losses of 4.7 million, losses that would be unsustainable long term. In 2013, having gone without a second-tier competition since the ARC folded, CEO Bill Pulver announced that there would be a revival of the competition, this time under the name the National Rugby Championship. The following TV commercial was the beginning of the end for the ARC though, with the 2007 season being its only in its history.
You don't know me yet,
but soon you'll invite me into your home.
Into your group of friends. Travel great distances just to see me.
Then tell me I'm bloody useless.
Or that I'm a bloody legend.
Your kids will want to be me.
And you'll treat me like a long lost mate.
A brother even. You will love me. Hate me.
kick me when I'm down, and you will scream my name. But you don't know me yet.
In assessing the success or otherwise of the ARC model, it's important to weigh up the pros and cons of the competition. For pros, the production and development of players for Super Rugby and Wallabies was important. This is shown through at least 10 of the players in the advertisement having played Super Rugby or higher since 2007, and 16 of the 30 of the 2011 Rugby World Cup squad playing in the ARC in 2007. The increased exposure of rugby to the community was also important. Matches were cheap, easy to get to at grassroots grounds around Australia while still displaying a high standard of rugby. The development of match officials was another important pro of the ARC in 2007, along with the television broadcast deal in which the ABC brought the right to broadcast the Australian Rugby Championship on free-to-air television. However, on the cons, the ARC held a poor financial model, with the ARU reporting losses of 4.7 million following just the 2007 season alone. In community engagement, the ARU really failed to capitalise on the potential for increased community engagement, with only one attendance across the whole competition above 5,000 and a grand final attendance of less than 2,000 people. Reintroduced in 2014, the National Rugby Championship was signalled as this new second tier of Australian Rugby Union, with player development and grassroots engagement being major influences on a revamped format. The ARU proposed rule modifications designed to make a more expansive and free-flowing style of rugby, with teams being awarded for taking chances and trying to score tries rather than simply kicking penalties, which was a major criticism to the fully professional game. Penalties and drop goals have been changed to 2 points, with conversions changed to 3, making scoring tries worth a potential 8. Bonus points have also been changed to winning by 3 tries rather than simply scoring 4, encouraging teams to get leads and continue to attack. The ARU was looking for an increased community involvement to the NRC, and this was perhaps highlighted by the inclusion of both New South Wales and Queensland countries from the inaugural season, and then the expansion to Fiji in 2017. Both New South Wales and Queensland countries have large, yet remote rugby communities who perhaps miss out on the vast majority of professional or semi-professional rugby purely due to location alone. Taking matches to these rural communities allows the ARU the opportunity to expand the horizons of rugby while continuing support and participation from the rural areas.
Do you feel that? It's kind of different, yet it feels just right. They're dedicated, committed to the hard yards, the long hours, whatever it takes. You bring your family, you bring your mates, because now it's closer, easier, and just around the corner. You've come to cheer, and they're here to play, determined to be set free. This is Rugby Unleashed. Hillcorp NRC kicks off August 20.
As with the ARC, it's important to review the NRC under the same conditions. So with pros, player development has been a massive positive coming out of NRC, with the current Wallaby squad featuring 10 players at least who have come through the NRC pathway. The increased exposure of rugby through the new Fox Sports TV deal for 2017, where 2 games are broadcast live on Fox each week and the other 2 games are live streamed online, has allowed rugby to reach more people through more exposure and broadcasting. The inclusion of Fiji for 2017 has further allowed the expansion of the game into a broader area, as well as helping identify talent and develop players within the Fijian communities, and this can only be beneficial for both Australian rugby and Fijian rugby long term. The final positive of 2017's NRC has been the increased community engagement, with things like the Pacifica Round and charity rounds, etc., allowing punters to experience other cultures through rugby. On the flip side though, the broadcast agreement still remains an area of weakness across Australian Rugby Union in general. In 2007, the ARC experienced success in a free-to-air TV schedule, something that Rugby Union hasn't had since. In 2017, only international matches were broadcast on free-to-air TV, with every Super Rugby match being broadcast on pay TV. This therefore limits the amount of people that are able to view rugby in the marketplace. The long-term player development pathway of the NRC still remains unclear. As the competition is still in its early years, large numbers in each squad consist of Super Rugby players, with the spread being about 50-50. Club players could be given more opportunity in the future to develop, and these squads could be capped at having a certain amount of Super Rugby players to allow more club rugby players to experience what it's like to be in a semi-professional environment. In conducting a review of the second tier competition and its success, we will now return to and answer the initial qualifying questions. Has the second tier model been a proven development tool for international success? This could be argued either way. The NRC and ARC in its time have both been shown as effective tools for player development and talent identification, but our results on the international stage haven't necessarily been reflective of an improved pathway. A recommendation here would be to cap Super Rugby players to allow more club player development, boosting club and Super Rugby and in turn the Wallabies. Has the inclusion of the second tier allowed rugby to reach a broader market? To some extent it has. With the inclusion of New South Wales and Queensland countries, higher profile games have been taken to smaller country towns such as Tamworth and Armidale. But the reach of the game is limited by pay TV broadcasting, as not everyone is able to afford to pay to watch rugby. In order to further broaden the game, the NRC needs to be taken into areas such as Adelaide or Tasmania, where AFL dominates the landscape in a push to make rugby more competitive. Free-to-air TV must be negotiated, as this will allow everyone from any walk of life to be able to watch rugby. Finally, does the modification of the rules to the second tier allow a more exciting and expansive brand of rugby? The answer is yes. You only have to look at the 2017 season to see that more high-scoring and free-flowing rugby is being played, with the Canberra Vikings scoring an average of 41 points per game so far. To conclude, while the NRC has largely been successful these past 4 seasons, it is important to continue the development of the game and continue to foster growth in non-rugby areas. Although the initial comment is highly critical of the second tier of Australian rugby, it isn't at all untrue, and a great deal needs to be done in order to return Australian rugby to the top. While the second tier model has been highly successful in New Zealand and South Africa and is a contributing factor to their success, the sporting marketplace in these countries isn't as crowded as Australia, and so following an exact blueprint may not work. The second tier needs to continue to be adapted to suit the Australian market, and, hopefully with long-term success of this competition, we will again become competitive.